Before the first shot echoed across Charleston Harbor, before Lincoln stepped onto the train that would carry him to Washington, before 4 years of fire carved permanent scars into the American landscape, there was a question hanging in the air. Could one nation, born of contradiction, survive its own origin? The men and women who lived through the 1860s did not read this question in newspapers. They walked through it. They bled inside it. They photographed it. And through those photographs, we see the moment when the United States nearly ceased to be. A fortress smashed open by artillery, brick torn apart, gun embrasures ripped from the walls. The ruins of Fort Sumter stand as the moment the country's long argument burst into war. There were no illusions left after this. Both sides mobilized. Both sides prepared for a conflict they believed would be short. Both sides were wrong. The camera arrived on the battlefield almost as quickly as the armies. A pontoon bridge thrown across Bull Run shows the Union learning to move an army of unprecedented size. Telegraph wire stretches through forests, strung by men who could feel history humming through copper. Scouts and guides kneel against a hillside, faces hard, the frontier brought into the heart of the East. Above them all, an air balloon rises, the Intrepid, drifting silently above the Potomac Valley, one of the world's first aerial reconnaissance platforms. And in the shadows stands Alan Pinkerton, founder of a wartime intelligence network that tracked armies and generals alike. The war of the 1860s was unlike any America had ever seen. September 1862. The cornfields of Maryland glow beneath an autumn sun. The morning after the bloodiest single day in American history, President Lincoln meets McClellan. The difference between them is written plainly on their faces. Lincoln, moving with desperate urgency. McClellan, cautious, measured, unwilling to risk the army that adored him. The battlefield around them is quiet, but the cameras record what silence hides: the sunken road, the West Woods, the bridges where entire brigades fell in minutes. For the first time, at Devil's Den, a Confederate sharpshooter lies behind a barricade of stones, body stiff, rifle by his side. In nearby fields, men from north and south lie intertwined, uniforms muddy beyond recognition. At Mary's Heights, Confederate soldiers lie motionless in the grass, showing what happens when men charge a wall fortified with artillery. These images froze the moment the war turned, not because Gettysburg ended the fight, but because it revealed what victory would require. Not all leaders shaped the war equally, but all left their imprint. Ulysses S. Grant, seated outside his tent near Cold Harbor, leans forward as if carrying the full weight of the Union on his shoulders. Across the lines, Robert E. Lee stands in the quiet dignity of a man watching his world dissolve. William Tecumseh Sherman, stern and unblinking, embodies the shift toward hard war. Phil Sheridan, small in stature but relentless in motion, sits among his generals, one of the cavalry minds who would tear through the Shenandoah Valley. George Meade, the victor of Gettysburg, rests by his headquarters tent, exhausted but resolute. And George McClellan, immaculate as always, represents what hesitation can cost. Between these men, the fate of millions was decided. A black family walks down a dirt road toward Union lines, children barefoot, mother gripping what little remains of their possessions. This is what hope looked like in wartime. Another family flees in the opposite direction, escaping fires, raids, and shifting battle lines. On the James River, black laborers unload the cargo that keeps the Union armies alive. Their presence in these images reveals a truth. The war did not merely free enslaved people. Enslaved people helped free the nation. The deeper Union armies pushed, the more the war reshaped the land. At Chattanooga, Peachtree Street looks carved open by conflict. At Fort Fisher, a sand bastion stands blasted apart. The pulpit,
shattered under naval fire. Then come the trenches, long, snaking scars across Petersburg, where soldiers crouched in mud and waited for death or surrender. Once the South's rail junctions fell, the Confederacy began to crumble. At Richmond, the ruins near the capital show the price of 4 years of total war. The old age of wooden ships ended in a single afternoon. The Monitor and the Virginia face off in Hampton Roads, steam, iron, and thunder.
Far upriver, the USS St. Louis, one of Yeade's ironclads, looks more like a floating fortress than a ship. The Onondaga presents a silhouette that hints at the battleships of the next century. Aboard the USS Mendota, a Dahlgren gun crew stands ready, calm, disciplined, lethal. This was not the Navy of 1812, this was the prototype for the navies of the world to come. After Gettysburg, surgeons perform an amputation under a tent, tools laid out, expressions grim. At Chancellorsville, wounded men lie in rows, waiting to be carried to field hospitals already overwhelmed. The darkest image of all, prisoners at Andersonville, gaunt as shadows, queue for their meager rations. And at Fredericksburg, soldiers bury the dead with simple wooden shovels. The war left few untouched. War is not won by courage alone. City Point, Virginia, warehouses, rail lines, steamers, barrels stacked to the horizon. This is the largest supply operation ever assembled in North America up to that time. Further south, at Whiteside, the Union builds a 4-tiered railroad trestle, rising like a cathedral of timber over the valley. Logistics, not luck, carried the Union to victory. In 1865, the ruins of Fort Sumter are photographed again. What began here has come full circle. The fort stands silent, shredded by years of bombardment, an image of a nation tested, destroyed, and reborn. And so we arrive again at the quiet parlor in Appomattox. The war began with a cannon blast in Charleston, it ends with ink on paper, and 2 generals exchanging quiet words. No band, no speeches, no triumph, a war that tore the nation apart is concluded with a handshake in a rented parlor. What remains is memory. These images are not relics, they are windows. Through them, the Civil War is not simply remembered, it is witnessed. From Sumter to Appomattox, the war forced the United States to redefine itself, through pain, through perseverance, through sacrifice. What emerged was not the same nation that entered. Because some stories are not told in words. Some are told in photographs, in glass plates that survived the fire, so that we might see what the nation once endured to become what it is. This is the American Civil War, seen, remembered.